In the vast, blood-soaked expanse of the Eastern Front, a new kind of hunter was being forged. The Red Army's decision to authorize women for direct combat was no act of desperation, but the calculated creation of a silent, precise weapon, a phantom on the battlefield, lethal from afar. These women were never intended as mere auxiliaries or figures for propaganda posters. They were to become an integral gear in the immense war machine grinding its way across Eastern Europe, a force destined to carry the fight toward the very heart of the Reich. Their targets would be enemy officers and strategic assets, and their training would be unforgiving. As the army bled on multiple fronts in March of 1942, the People's Commissariat of Defense issued a transformative order. The decree, signed by Marshal Clement Voroshilov, formally opened direct combat functions to women, but it sought a very particular kind of warrior. Candidates had to be between 20 and 45 years of age, possess superior physical aptitude, and have completed their basic education before even facing a rigorous 4-day selection process. The tactical premise was brutally simple: to create specialized soldiers capable of disorganizing the enemy through the surgical elimination of its leadership. This was not a policy born of improvisation. Throughout the 1930s, the Soviet High Command, under Voroshilov's own supervision, had developed a doctrine for using snipers as a weapon of psychological warfare, knowing a single shot could paralyze an entire unit. Soviet strategists had observed that women often displayed qualities ideal for this grim work. They saw a greater emotional stability under sustained pressure, a superior capacity for concentration during long, silent vigils, and a remarkable physical resistance to hours of frozen immobility. Commanders noted an outstanding aptitude for stealth and camouflage, an ability to melt into the broken landscapes of the front. Reports from the field soon began to document superior success rates in female sniper units, a testament to their chilling effectiveness. In the eastern suburbs of Moscow, a quiet revolution was taking shape. To professionalize its combatants, the Soviet command established the Central School of Snipers for Women in May of 1942. Located in Veshnyaky, this training center swiftly became the global epicenter for the most advanced tactical instruction available to female marksmen. The academic program, lasting between 3 and 6 months, was adjusted to the individual performance of each cadet, ensuring that only the most capable would proceed. The curriculum was exhaustive, designed to forge weapons from women through an implacable regimen. Future snipers received intensive instruction in the complex sciences of ballistics, distance calculation, and wind compensation. They mastered camouflage in urban ruins and dense forests, practiced methods of infiltration and escape, and learned to read the tactical contours of the terrain itself. Each day began in the cold darkness before dawn with a forced 20-kilometer march. This was followed by controlled shooting practices at 400 and 800 meters, lessons in topography and compass orientation, and drills in constructing shelters for self-sufficient survival. The school's director, Nora Yegorova, a veteran of the Spanish Civil War, imposed a system of iron discipline and technical perfection that left no room for physical or mental weakness. Cadets who failed to meet her unforgiving standards were immediately reassigned as radio operators or field nurses. At the main practice field in Kosino, the grim reality of the front was recreated in painstaking detail. Complete trench systems, zones of artificial ruin, and forests adapted for guerrilla warfare served as the classroom. Here, cadets were forced to survive for up to a week without instructor contact, honing their long-range marksmanship in covert operations under conditions that simulated the crushing stress of actual combat. The standard armament for a graduate was the Mosin Nagant M 1891-30 rifle, fitted with a 3.5 magnification PU telescopic sight. Adapted specifically for snipers in 1932, This weapon had an effective range of up to 800 meters and had become the most trusted precision instrument in the Soviet arsenal. The optical sight was permanently mounted, guaranteeing stability and a chillingly consistent accuracy. Alongside her primary rifle, each sniper received a Tokarev TT-33 pistol as a secondary weapon and a camouflage uniform suited to her operational sector. Her survival equipment included waterproof canvas, dry rations, a combat knife, and a compass, along with a folding tripod for the rifle. She also carried a casualty record notebook, a grim ledger that had to be signed by an immediate superior after each confirmed elimination, ensuring the brutal precision of their statistics. Once graduated, these women were distributed strategically, often operating in small cells of 2 or 3 per division. They deployed to wooded zones, shattered villages, and advanced lines, anywhere they could command a view from an elevated position or an enemy blind spot. Their effectiveness was measured not just in casualties, but in the psychological terror they inflicted, forcing enemy troops to move with a constant, gnawing fear. Their impact was documented across the Kalinin front, where they systematically eliminated German observers, and on the Belarusian and First Baltic fronts, where they crippled supply lines. Among the most successful was the 100th Battalion of Female Snipers, an autonomous unit that, according to Red Army reports, accumulated over 12,000 confirmed kills. They were a symbol of the hidden power of Soviet forces, a silent weapon forged in the shadows of the world's most brutal war. In the fading ink of Red Army archives, one name echoes with an almost chilling frequency. Her story was not lost to the shadows of combat, but etched into official reports, frontline newspapers, and the personal diaries that outlived the war, chronicling how a young kindergarten teacher was forged into one of the Eastern Front's most lethal hunters. Roza Shanina was born on April 3, 1924, in the deep rural heart of Russia, the daughter of a lumberjack in the village of Lyudmila. After her pedagogical training, she was teaching children in Arkhangelsk when the war descended like a storm, tearing her destiny from its quiet course. In December of 1941, the news that her brother Mikhail had fallen in the siege of Leningrad ignited a resolve that would define the rest of her brief, violent life. She presented herself to the local recruitment office, only to be turned away. Military regulations barred women under 20 from direct combat roles, but Shanina's determination was unyielding. Throughout 1942, she threw herself into the Sevobuk military program, a mandatory basic training for Soviet civilians, honing the fundamental skills of a soldier. Her persistence was rewarded in 1943, when she was finally accepted into the Central School of Female Snipers in Moscow. The training that awaited her was brutal, designed to strip away the civilian and forge an instrument of precision warfare. For 4 months, Shanina learned to master the complex ballistics of her rifle, to develop camouflage that rendered her invisible on any terrain, and to practice infiltration skills that allowed her to glide undetected toward the enemy. She graduated with honors in April of 1944, her skill in long-range shooting setting her apart. Though invited to remain as an instructor, she requested an immediate transfer to an active front. Her military file confirms her arrival at the front on April 2, 1944, assigned as a sergeant to the 184th Rifle Division of the 3rd Belarusian Front. During the Vitebsk-Orsha offensive that June, as the Red Army pushed against collapsing German defenses, Shanina recorded her first confirmed kills. Her first victim fell on April 5th on the outskirts of Vitebsk, the start of a military career that would span just 9 months, but would forge a legend. Over the next 3 months, she took part in more than a dozen documented operations. Official reports signed by her commander, Major Degtyarev, confirmed that by July, her tally had reached 13 enemy soldiers. For her chilling effectiveness, she was awarded the Order of Glory, 3rd class, on April 18th, a decoration rarely bestowed upon a soldier so young. The battle for Vilnius that July marked a turning point, where in the brutal street-to-street fighting, She was credited with 12 more kills, raising her total to 25. It was here that her name began to appear in the bulletins of the military newspaper Krasnaya Zvezda, a symbol of the deadly efficiency of Soviet women in urban warfare. But what truly set Shanina apart was a lethal innovation she called the doublet. This tactic involved firing 2 rounds in a single respiratory cycle, exploiting the body's minimal natural sway to place 2 projectiles on 1 or more targets in rapid succession. With a standard bolt-action rifle, the technique was extraordinarily difficult. Yet her field records show she used it to eliminate a German commander and his observer in under 5 seconds. With the Soviet advance rolling toward the heart of the Reich, Shanina was deployed to East Prussia in September of 1944. This was the most dangerous theater of operations for any sniper. German troops, now defending their own soil with fanatic desperation, had learned to fear their unseen enemies. For a sniper, every shadow was a potential grave. It was in the dense forests and bombed-out ruins of East Prussia that Shanina's lethal activity reached its peak. The Germans deployed their own counter-sniper teams and used artillery to blanket any suspicious position. Yet by the end of November, Shanina's verified count stood at 42. In December, it climbed to 51, and by January, she reached the 59 confirmed kills that would become her final mark, each one witnessed by an observer and validated in daily combat reports. Throughout her time at the front, Shanina kept a campaign diary, a fascinating mixture of logistical notes, tactical observations, and private reflections. The pages contained technical details on ballistics and formulas for calculating distance, but also a fierce insistence on integrity. She would, she wrote, never count a death she had not seen with her own eyes or that was not backed by a witness, for the numbers were not medals, but human lives. The end came on January 27, 1945, on the outskirts of Ilmsdorf. While advancing through swampy terrain, her unit was shattered by German mortar fire. When the artillery commander of her squad fell wounded, Shanina crawled toward him through the unrelenting barrage. According to the after-action report, she shielded the officer with her own body as other soldiers attempted an evacuation. In that selfless act, she was struck by mortar fragments in her torso and back. The wounds were catastrophic. She died a few hours later, her life bleeding out into the frozen mud before medical aid could arrive. Her comrades buried her where she fell, in an improvised grave marked only by her bayonet plunged into the earth, her military identification tag hanging from its hilt. Her death was formally recorded on January 28, 1945, exactly 3 months before the war in Europe would finally be over. In the vast silence of the Kazakh steppes, a life was unmade before it had truly begun. The story of Aliya Moldagulova is a harrowing testament to how the crucible of war could forge a lethal soldier from the most unlikely of origins. Born in the Bulak district on October 25, 1925, Aliya lost her mother in early childhood. Her father was later swept away in the Stalinist purges, leaving her an orphan of the state. She was sent to Leningrad, placed under the guardianship of her uncle, and registered at boarding school number 46, her life governed by the impersonal, ordered routine of Soviet institutions. But when the war came, this fragile stability was shattered. As the siege of Leningrad began in 1941, Aliya was evacuated with thousands of other orphans to the Yaroslavl Oblast, a desperate flight from the German stranglehold on the old imperial capital. The move saved her life, but it severed her last ties to everything she had ever known. In 1942, though only 16 years old and below the minimum age for enlistment, she walked into a recruitment office in Yaroslavl. It was not propaganda or pity that swayed the officers, but the quiet intensity in her eyes, backed by superb academic records, excellent physical conditioning, and a raw, natural marksmanship that stunned them during preliminary tests. By mid-1943, she was a cadet in a specialized academy where 5 intensive months transformed her. On the Cosino practice range, her ballistic tests showed a dispersion deviation of less than 1.5% at 600 meters, a level of accuracy that veteran shooters struggled to achieve. This earned her a rare honor, a personalized rifle, its telescopic sight calibrated specifically to her. Assigned to the 54th Independent Rifle Brigade of the 22nd Army, she was thrust into the grinding warfare of the Northwest Front. Under the command of General A. I. Novikov, her unit fought through swampy forests and fortified villages where the front line was an endless blur of attack and counterattack. Her first combat mission came in September of 1943 near Velikiya Luki on the border between Russia and Estonia. Within her first month, reconnaissance reports confirmed she had eliminated 11 enemy soldiers, each kill meticulously documented. Her reputation as an elite shooter was born in the mud and blood of that contested landscape. Through October, she took part in the offensive to liberate villages between Nevel and Pustoshka, a sector where the dense marshy terrain was a sniper's hunting ground. Operating in a mobile unit, Aliya and her squad dismantled enemy surveillance points and provided lethal cover for advancing riflemen. Her effectiveness was so chilling that by November, battalion records show she had been assigned a personal spotter and granted the authority to operate as an autonomous unit. Such tactical freedom was almost never given to a soldier so young, but her results silenced any doubt. As the brutal winter of 1943 descended, her focus shifted to defensive positions in the frozen forests near Lake Nevel. In temperatures that plunged to 40 degrees below zero, she stalked her prey, eliminating German artillery observers and winning deadly duels against 2 enemy snipers that sometimes lasted for days. By December, meticulously kept records, each entry signed by her section commander, Lieutenant Ivan Golikov, documented her count at 56 confirmed kills. There were no estimates, no assumptions. Every number represented a life she had ended. Her final operation began on January 11, 1944. The 54th Rifle Battalion was ordered to break the German defensive line near the village of Kazachika and establish a bridgehead. As they advanced, her unit was pinned down by a torrent of fire from an MG-34, its position so well camouflaged it was invisible to Soviet observers. Aliya received the order to neutralize it. She began to crawl, covering more than 200 meters of exposed ground under relentless enemy fire, moving inch by agonizing inch over 3 hours. Once in position, her signature precision took over. She systematically eliminated 3 German soldiers at the edges of the trench before targeting the machine gunner himself. But just as her rifle fell silent, a German grenade exploded nearby, riddling her left shoulder and right thigh with shrapnel. Despite the blood loss and searing pain, she pushed forward, discarding her rifle for an MP-40 automatic retrieved from a fallen German. In the chaos of hand-to-hand combat that followed, she killed 3 more enemy soldiers, helping to clear the trench completely. Her action had broken the stalemate. In the final moments of the fight, a shot struck her in the abdomen. She was evacuated to a field hospital where surgeons fought for hours to save her, but the internal damage was too severe. Aliya Moldagulova died on January 14, 1944, just days after her 18th birthday. Her service record, closed that same day, officially credited her with 78 enemy kills in less than 5 months of combat, making her one of the deadliest female snipers in the Red Army. Of all the horrors documented on the Eastern Front, some atrocities stand apart. They speak not just of the chaos of battle, but of a deliberate, systematic cruelty that defies comprehension, transcending every known convention of war. The story of Tatyana Baramzina is one such account, a raw testament to the fate of a captured Soviet sniper. Born in 1919 in the city of Glazov, she was raised in a family that prized service and education. Tatyana would graduate as a geography teacher, a discipline that gave her an intimate understanding of topography and terrain, knowledge that would soon prove invaluable. When Operation Barbarossa tore across the Soviet Union, she committed herself to the war effort with a dual focus, enrolling in a night course for nursing while simultaneously registering for sniper training. In the hushed discipline of the sniper course, her geographical knowledge and natural coordination made her a standout. Her aptitude for long-distance shooting was exceptional, placing her among the top candidates. Her ability to calculate wind and distance with unnerving precision made her an ideal candidate for advanced training, which she began in June of 1943. For 5 months, she mastered the cold mechanics of her rifle, perfected techniques of camouflage and infiltration, and hardened herself against the elements. On the windswept practice fields, her precision was chilling, hitting moving targets with 92% accuracy at distances up to 600 meters. Deployed to the 3rd Belarusian Front at the close of 1943, she quickly proved her worth, accumulating 16 confirmed kills in her first 3 months. By mid-1944, the Red Army unleashed Operation Bagration, a colossal offensive to shatter the German Army Group Center and liberate Belarus. Tatyana was assigned to an assault operation deep behind enemy lines near the village of Pekalin. Her battalion was ferried across a river under the cloak of darkness, their orders to secure a strategic crossing and hold it for 24 hours, a lifetime in hostile territory. As daylight broke on July 4th, Tatyana's rifle spoke with lethal accuracy, providing cover as her squad advanced. But the cost was high. In an improvised shelter, she traded her rifle for bandages, her training as a nurse now just as critical as her skill as a sniper. She chose to remain, to defend the wounded. It was a decision that would seal her fate. The German counterattack came in the pre-dawn gloom of July 5th, a storm of mortar fire and grenades. From the shelter's flank, Tatyana unleashed a torrent of fire from a light machine gun, cutting down 3 soldiers who tried to breach their line. When enemy fire silenced the weapon, she fell back to her rifle, a lone defender against overwhelming odds. With only 14 cartridges left, she held her ground for more than 2 hours. Her last defiant act was seen from afar, 2 hand grenades hurled into an advancing enemy trench, the explosion echoing for kilometers. The post was finally overrun. In the chaos, most of the Soviet defenders were executed where they fell, a common German practice in sectors plagued by snipers. But Tatyana was taken alive. When the Red Army retook the ground the next day, what they found defied even the brutal logic of war. Reconnaissance troops discovered her body near the very shelter she had fought to defend. The forensic report was a meticulous catalog of inhumanity, deep bayonet cuts to her face and neck, stab wounds, and massive contusions suggesting systematic torture. Yet the cause of death was an act of singular, calculated savagery. Her skull had been obliterated by a 45mm anti-tank shell fired at point-blank range. It was an execution without precedent, a murder that served no military purpose. The physical destruction was so complete that she could only be identified by her characteristic braids and the sniper's insignia on the tattered remains of her uniform. Her name was entered into the rolls of the irrecoverable casualties, but her case was marked for a special investigation. On July 18, 1944, a request was sent for her to be posthumously decorated as a hero of the Soviet Union. The file assembled on her death, containing survivor testimonies, combat reports, and the grim forensic photographs, became a powerful instrument of justice, documenting a pattern of atrocities committed against the women who fought for the Soviet Union. In the crucible of the Second World War, where entire armies vanished into the mud and snow of the Eastern Front, some legends were forged not in the thunder of artillery, but in the silence between heartbeats. Among the Soviet women who answered the call to arms, one name would echo far beyond the battlefield, carried on whispers of awe and propaganda. Lyudmila Mikhailovna Pavlichenko was born in 1916 in the Ukrainian town of Belyatsirkov. Her family later moved to Kiev, a city being transformed by the relentless gears of Soviet industrialization. At the age of 14, she found her calling not in a factory, but at a shooting club run by the state's paramilitary organization. For 7 years, she honed her craft in regional competitions, her dedication turning a youthful hobby into an almost supernatural skill with long weapons. This early training, a mastery of precision most soldiers took years to learn, became the foundation of her future. By 1937, she was a history student at the University of Kiev. Her academic pursuits in military strategy and conflict analysis sharpened her mind, providing a theoretical framework for the deadly art she had already perfected. When the war came crashing into the Soviet Union in the summer of 1941, she was a woman armed with both a scholar's intellect and a marksman's eye. With the launch of Operation Barbarossa, Lyudmila went straight to a recruitment office in Kiev. Initially offered a role as a nurse, she refused, insisting her place was behind the scope of a rifle. To prove her point, she was given a test. From 400 meters, her shots clustered into a circle less than 5 centimeters wide, an astonishing feat that silenced any doubt. She was assigned directly to the 25th Infantry Division of the Red Army, her exhaustive civilian training deemed more than sufficient. Without any further instruction, she was handed her service rifle and sent to the inferno of the Southern Front. Her baptism by fire took place on the Odessa front during 70 days of brutal urban defense. The landscape of ruined buildings and rubble-choked streets was a perfect hunting ground for a sniper. Here, Lyudmila's technique was defined by an almost inhuman patience. She could remain motionless for hours, a ghost in the wreckage, waiting for the precise moment to deliver a single lethal shot. Each of her kills was meticulously documented, verified by an observer to ensure the accuracy of her growing tally. In those 70 days, she eliminated 187 enemy soldiers. Among them were 36 German and Romanian snipers who had been terrorizing Soviet troops. From a single hidden position, she would sometimes take 5 or more lives before melting back into the shadows. When Soviet forces were compelled to evacuate Odessa in October of 1941, the 25th Division was redeployed to the Crimean Peninsula. They were sent to hold Sevastopol, a port city that would become the site of one of the most savage sieges of the entire war. Here, the fighting devolved into a nightmarish struggle for every meter of ground, a war fought in trenches, subterranean tunnels, and the skeletal remains of bombed-out structures. In this new, claustrophobic environment, Lyudmila adapted her methods. She learned to use the jagged terrain for cover, hiding for days among the rocks, and perfected the art of shooting from the deep shadows of tunnels and caves. She began using the semi-automatic Tokarev SVT-40 rifle, a weapon that allowed for rapid follow-up shots when speed was more critical than absolute precision. Her sniper duels became legendary contests of will, sometimes stretching for days as she and her opponents studied each other's movements, waiting for the one fatal mistake. By February of 1942, she had added another 72 enemies to her record. In March, she was promoted to lieutenant and given command of her own platoon of sharpshooters, a testament not only to her lethality, but to her ability to lead. By the end of May, her officially verified count stood at 309. Her career as a combatant, however, was about to end as suddenly as it began. On the 2nd of June, while moving to a new firing position, she was struck by shrapnel from a mortar explosion. Evacuated first to a field hospital and then to the rear, she would recover from her wounds. But the Soviet High Command decided her fight would continue on a different kind of front. Recognizing her immense value as a living symbol, they understood that Lyudmila Pavlichenko was now more powerful as an icon than as a soldier. Her war on the battlefield was over. Her role in the global war of ideas was just beginning. The scent of gunpowder and earth was replaced by the polished corridors of power. By August of 1942, Lyudmila Pavlichenko had become a symbol, assigned to a Soviet delegation bound for North America. Their mission was threefold: to forge closer bonds with the United States and Canada, to ignite public support for a second front in Europe, and to project an image of unbreakable Soviet resolve against the German war machine. Her journey began in Washington, D.C., where the White House doors swung open to receive her. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and the First Lady, Eleanor, welcomed the young sniper, an encounter meticulously captured by official photographers. It was a moment without precedent. The first time an American president had formally received a Soviet combatant, a woman whose battlefield prowess was already legendary. Across America, at press conferences, radio studios, and union halls, she presented a stark and powerful image. Clad in her full military uniform, her chest adorned with the decorations and insignia of a master sniper, she defied every American expectation of a Soviet woman. Her message was as direct and unadorned as her appearance. She spoke of the brutal conditions on the front, the tactical urgency of Allied relief, and the chilling calculus of casualties inflicted by her comrades. She offered no emotional appeals, her words always circling back to the singular, desperate need for military aid. From the United States, her tour extended to Canada, where she met with Army officers in Ottawa and was decorated by veterans organizations. In the United Kingdom, she walked the floors of armament factories and exchanged technical knowledge on sniper tactics with British Army representatives. As a gesture of international recognition, she was gifted an American-made Winchester rifle with a telescopic sight, a weapon that now rests in the Central Museum of the Armed Forces in Moscow, a silent testament to her journey. When she returned to the Soviet Union in November, the state welcomed its hero. The Presidium of the Supreme Soviet bestowed upon her the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, accompanied by the Order of Lenin and the Gold Star. Her official military file was closed with a final verified count of 309 enemy kills, a number free from propaganda or inflation. With her own days on the front lines over, she was assigned to the Central School of Snipers, where her combat experience became the curriculum, shaping new generations of shooters until 1953. The city was a graveyard of steel and stone, and in its shadow, a legend was forged. Among the conquerors of Berlin was a commander named Nina Lobkovskaya, whose story represents the apex of the Soviet female sniper program. At just 17 years old, she had risen to lead over 100 female snipers into the war's most decisive battle, transforming adolescent resolve into lethal leadership. Born in Western Siberia in 1925, Nina's childhood was severed by the very state she would later serve. The arrest of her father during the purges of 1937 left her family branded as relatives of an enemy of the people. This early encounter with tragedy hardened her resolve, shaping a will of iron that would define her military career. When Germany's invasion turned the Soviet Union into a continental inferno, a 16-year-old Nina tried to volunteer for the army. But she had to wait until 1942, upon turning 17, to be formally accepted into the specialized academy near Moscow. Her training unfolded during the punishing winter of 1942-43, a trial by ice and exhaustion that weeded out all but the most resilient. Military archives confirm her mastery. She passed every marksmanship test with scores placing her in the top 5% of her class. But it was her innate tactical mind, not just her skill with a rifle, that set her apart. In simulated combat, she coordinated teams, read the terrain, and made decisions under fire with a clarity that marked her for command. Upon graduation, she was given command of a platoon composed entirely of women, 108 elite snipers. This unit was attached to the 3rd Shock Army of the Belarusian Front, a formation specializing in urban assault and breaking fortified lines. For an 18-year-old to hold such a command was remarkable, a testament to the brutal attrition that consumed Soviet officers. Soviet doctrine prized snipers in city warfare, deploying them to forward positions in ruined buildings and collapsed structures. From these perches, they covered the infantry's advance, their mission to neutralize enemy observers, artillery spotters, and other hidden shooters. Her platoon's first major test came during the Vistula Oder offensive in early 1945, where reports from the 3rd Shock Army credited her snipers with eliminating 47 enemy targets while securing vital river crossings. Coordinating 108 snipers in simultaneous operations demanded incredible skill. Nina devised a system of signals to direct concentrated fire on multiple targets without betraying her unit's positions. Her methods involved constant rotation, diversionary fire, and infiltration techniques that allowed her snipers to operate deep within enemy-held territory. The final, blood-soaked stage of her career began in April 1945 with the assault on Berlin itself. The German capital was the ultimate challenge, a labyrinth of rubble, desperate defenders, and street-by-street combat. Nina and her platoon were tasked with clearing sectors of German snipers who had been left behind, ghosts in the ruins still inflicting casualties on advancing troops. During the fighting for the Kreuzberg district, her unit eliminated 14 enemy shooters in 3 days of relentless operations, all coordinated from a command post overlooking the Tiergarten. Years of combat had honed her personal technique into a lethal art. She learned to read the urban battlefield, spotting an enemy's presence in the slightest clues. A curtain stirring in the wind, the glint of a scope, or the subtle shift of rubble that betrayed a hidden marksman. This instinct made her an exceptional hunter in a city of hunters. During the final struggle for the Reichstag between April 28th and May 2nd, Nina was in the thick of the fight. Her platoon provided suppressive fire, neutralizing German sniper nests in the buildings surrounding the symbolic objective. Though she did not raise the flag herself, her unit's lethal cover enabled the assault troops to reach the Parliament building, saving countless lives in the final desperate hours. Nina Lobkovskaya's official record stands at 89 confirmed kills, a figure verified by the Ministry of Defense in 1946. Her targets were primarily high-value artillery observers, machine gun crews, and rival snipers defeated in deadly duels. She adapted her arsenal for the shifting demands of urban combat, using a standard-scoped rifle for precision shots and a semi-automatic Tokarev SVT-40 when a higher rate of fire was needed. She credited her survival to a simple rule she developed after watching less cautious comrades fall: never fire more than 2 shots from the same position. After the fall of Berlin, Nina was decorated with the Order of the Red Star and other high honors. Yet, unlike some of her famous peers, she was never paraded as a figure of international propaganda. Instead, her expertise was recognized within the Red Army, where she served as a sniper instructor until her retirement in the 1960s, shaping a new generation of soldiers.